I was having Yoshiba Rico from StreetScores, and the Washington Commanders signed an elite deep threat wide receiver as an undrafted free agent, man. But not only is he a deep threat, he had almost a 70% contested catch rate, man. We got to dive into who this player is, where he came from, how did he even go undrafted just off of those stats alone. I want to dive into his athletic profile and break down why the 40 time that he ran was not a really good indication of how athletic he actually really is. And I want to dive into whether or not he has a real chance to make this roster as a wide receiver. He also provides some special teams upside as well. But before we get into everything, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Again, I'm still working on my Gabe Taylor video because I'm trying to do as much research on him as possible so that I don't only just bring up the fact that he's Sean Taylor's brother. I want to break down exactly why I feel like he may have a real chance of making this roster. So stay tuned for that video later on. Stay tuned for all of my video breakdowns of a lot of the different undrafted free agents and everything. And hey, man, I'm about to start getting to these film sessions for the draft class as well. Without further ado, let's go and dive into this video right now, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so Louisville wide receiver, former Alabama wide receiver Ja'Cory Brooks is headed to the Commanders as an undrafted free agent, as reported by Mike Garafolo. The Alabama transfer had 61 catches for 1,013 yards and 9 touchdowns just last season alone, just purely last season. And how many receivers in this draft class can even say that? And so this is one of the true deep threats of the draft. Now he's joining Washington, and we already had Jalen Lane, who's a really good deep threat that ran a 4.34. Now we just acquired another one at a time that we really need those guys, man. We really need some deep threat. Outside of Terry McLaurin, before we got Jalen Lane and before we just added Ja'Cory Brooks, we had no deep threats. Since De'Ami Brown left, it was just Terry McLaurin and that was it. And like I've been screaming for the past few weeks, letting Terry McLaurin be our only deep threat is unhealthy because teams are just going to shade the safeties his direction. They're going to focus on making sure he can't take the lid off of the defense. And then everybody else, they're just like, hey, y'all do what y'all do underneath. But at the very least, we know nobody but Terry McLaurin can beat us for 50 plus yards down the field for a touchdown. And now that you brought in Jalen Lane and also Ja'Cory Brooks, we'll see if he makes the roster, but now at least you have a couple of deep threats on your team. Ja'Cory Brooks also gives you some returner upside as well, because right now, I mean, I guess Luke McCaffrey will be your returner because all of our main punt returners last year are gone. Olamide Zaccheaus went to the Bears. Jamison Crowder was not re-signed, I believe, by anybody. It would have just been Luke McCaffrey and I guess Casimir Allen, who we've been waiting for to hopefully spark as a returner for the past like 2-3 years now. So luckily we brought in Jalen Lane. I think he'll be your starting punt returner and kick returner. I mean, he's the quickest returner we've had since at least Brandon Banks. So I'm really excited about his upside there. We finally have potentially like a real difference maker returner. Maybe not to the level of like a Turpin of the Cowboys, but then again, who else in the NFL is like Turpin of the Cowboys? But Ja'Cory Brooks also has a chance to compete there as well. So he went from technically no returners, if you include Luke McCaffrey, in my opinion, even though he was decent, he wasn't bad, but now we have 2 real returner threats. And shouts out to Ben Standig. He even tweeted, here's your undrafted free agent receiver crush for the summer. Louisville wide receiver Ja'Cory Brooks is joining the Commanders per Mike Garafolo. The 6'2" Alabama transfer went again 61 catches, 1,013 yards, and 9 touchdowns last season with a ridiculous catch radius, and he returns kicks as well. And he emphasized the fact that this is going to be your receiver crush for the summer, because you know we typically have those 1 or 2 players that's an undrafted free agent that we're just really rooting for to make the team. This is going to be one of those guys. We're going to dive into a little later why most people didn't even expect this guy to go undrafted. Like, people are shocked at the fact that he went undrafted. Some people even feel like he should have went as early as the 5th round. So this is definitely a guy to keep your eye on throughout the offseason, because he may really have an honest shot of making this team even as an undrafted free agent. And just to let you know, he led Alabama in receiving touchdowns in 2022 before spending the majority of the 2023 season injured. And then in 2024, he went to Louisville, where, shouts out to Kyron Samuels, he said that he was an easy accelerator, stop and start was plus, excellent off the line with little wasted movement, so he has a good release package to avoid getting jammed and pressed at the line of scrimmage, can run the full route tree, and he also is savvy with hand fighting to keep defensive backs off of him. And he also has 16.6 yards per reception in 2024. That's insane. All of those traits plus that production is, why was he undrafted? No character concerns, no nothing. I think it's literally purely just his 40 time. Just like how Xavier Restrepo ran like that 4.83 and that completely plummeted his draft stock. Even though Ja'Cory Brooks ran nowhere near that bad of a time, I'm assuming that's just what it has to be. Shouts out to Pete Nikos, because you got to remember, he was a former 5-star recruit as well for Alabama. Like a top 30-something high school recruit. This was a guy that everybody in the country wanted going into college. It's amazing that he leads the Alabama Crimson Tide in receiving touchdowns in 2022. He's hurt all 2023. Then he transfers to Louisville and has 1,000 yards and literally is the reason that Tyler Shough even got drafted, let alone as high as the second round. And somehow people forgot about him or don't care about him. It's crazy. I mean, this guy had 3 catches for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns against SMU in one game last year. And also, you got to remember, he's the guy that had this ridiculous catch this past season for Louisville. Like, come on, man. That's one of the best plays of any receiver in this entire draft class. Even as much as I love Trey Harrison, he was my favorite receiver out of this entire draft class. This play is ridiculous, man. I mean, even just the ball tracking. This guy turned one way, then had to turn back the other way after a clear pass interference, still made the catch and scored the touchdown. That's insane stuff, man. And now to the point that a lot of people just can't even believe he went undrafted. Shouts out to Cole Plant on Twitter. He said Louisville wide receiver Ja'Cory Brooks is one of my favorite wide receivers in the class. He can stop on a dime in his breaks and has a long catch radius. Had over 1,000 yards this past season and should be a sneaky get for a team come April. This was back on December 19th of 2024. Then you have Theo Ash at Theo Ash NFL, you know, like the famous guy on Twitter that's always breaking down a lot of football content, draft stuff for PF Pro Football Network. He just simply tweeted on April 26th, Ja'Cory Brooks shouldn't have been undrafted. Plain and simple. Then you have Who Dey Updates, a Bengals account on Twitter. They tweeted, Ja'Cory Brooks being an undrafted free agent is crazy to me. Would love for the Bengals to give him a call. I think he's a very, very talented wide receiver with physical traits to definitely succeed in the NFL level. Broke out at 21 years old at Bama, now coming off of a 1,000 year at Louisville. Good player. Then you even have Mike. He said Ja'Cory Brooks averaged 16.6 yards per catch with a 1,000 yard season and 9 touchdowns on a top 10 offense in college last year and somehow went undrafted. And it's crazy too, because even before the draft, according to NFL Draft Buzz, shouts out to them for compiling everybody's big boards together, his overall average rank was 218.7. I mean, you had Draft Buzz that felt like he was 253rd on their big board, NFL.com 270th, MDDB 271st, and Pro Football Focus 318th. That's crazy. But maybe Pro Football Focus was the most accurate as far as where he actually landed on people's big boards, like NFL team-wise, with the fact that he went undrafted. But Draft Bible had him ranked 96th out of all players, not just receivers, all players. They felt like he was a top 100 player that should have gone by at least day 2. And then you have Draft Wire that felt like he was an 80th best player in this entire class. Maybe worthy of even going late in the second round. So it's crazy, the disparity and like the range of like where people felt like he should have been drafted. It's insane. But shouts out to Ed Oliver for even pointing out the fact that Jacob had the most 20+ yard catches this last year out of any wide receiver, which is insane when you think about how slow he ran in the 40 time. We'll get there soon. But I mean, this guy was first team all ACC, y'all. Like, people feel like he could have and should have even gone again as high as the 5th round at the latest. And I would argue that he made Tyler Shough look good enough to get drafted in the second round. Like I said earlier, like that's all him, in my opinion. I mean, let's just go ahead and dive into it. Shouts out to Louisville for putting out this article and breaking down this information on him, because I feel like this is pretty useful. He's 6'3", nearly 200 pounds, and is just the 11th Louisville player ever to log a 1,000-yard receiving season. He also is just the 4th Louisville player to have a 1,000-yard and 9-touchdown receiving season, joining Tutu Atwell, Deion Branch, and Arnold Jackson, who did it twice. That being said, the reason that he went undrafted and remains unsigned, well, now he's signed with us, is likely due to his measurables and testing numbers. At Louisville's pro day, he ran a 4.65 40-yard dash. I think that's what did it, along with a 1.56 and a 2.47 10 and 20-yard splits. He also logged a vertical jump of only 30. That wasn't very good, and a broad jump of 9.8, also not very good, and a 4.35 shuttle, and a 7.18 3-cone. But he bench pressed 12 times, but that's still not like a lot. And then you also add in the fact that technically he ended up getting measured at 6'2", 185 pounds at the combine. And then his relative athletic score ended up being a 4.15 out of 10. A 4.15 out of 10, which placed him 215th out of all of the wide receivers in this draft pool. So that's what did it. I don't know what happened when it came to his pro day in the combine, why he tested so terribly, because he does not look that slow on tape at all. And it's not even just me just using my eyes. Shouts out to Real Analytics. His IGA score, his in-game athleticism score, is 91.7 out of this draft class, which is 92nd percentile. They even tweeted, Louisville Ja'Cory Brooks is a physical presence at the position with in-game movement skills to match. Functional strength and body control allow him to win through contact and sustain separation throughout the route stem. Like as you can see on the screen right now, he reached almost a 20.1 miles per hour speed. His average YOS created, yards of separation, was 4.4 yards. That's insane. And when you're most importantly athletic profile wise, you see the NFL average right there for wide receivers. He's above that. The NFL average is somewhere around like 85, maybe 86 as far as IGA athleticism score. He's like at 91.7. So he's more than a good enough athlete for the NFL level. Again, I don't know what happened when it came time to actually go like test at his pro day, run the 40 and all of that type of stuff. I don't know if he just didn't properly prepare, but my point is he's a way better athlete with the shoulder pads and helmets on tape, on the field when it matters most than whenever he tested at his pro day, man. I mean, it's even crazier. Shouts out to Evan Lazar for pointing out the fact that the fastest wide receivers in the gauntlet at the combine when it comes to miles per hour, you had Jimmy Horn with a 19.81 top speed, Jordan Watkins with a 19.78, and then Ja'Cory Brooks third with a 19.71 out of all wide receivers in this class that did the gauntlet at the combine, man, which was ahead of Isaac Tesla, who was fourth, then Jaden Higgins, then Arian Smith, the 4.2 something guy, my boy out of Georgia, Elijah Badger, Xavier Restrepo, even though he had a terrible 40 times, so that doesn't necessarily help Ja'Cory Brooks' case, but Pat Bryant, you have Tez Johnson that's 150 when wet. He was 10th out of the group. Ja'Cory Brooks was, again, let me reiterate, third in the highest miles per hour, the fastest receiver in the gauntlet. So I'm telling you, he's way faster on tape. And when it comes to like actual real movement scenarios, like drills, than he is just with the actual testing that takes place at pro days. And I'm personally gonna more so bet on what I've seen on tape and the fact that when they actually go through wide receiver drills, they're catching passes. He was the third fastest receiver. I'm betting on that way more than whatever he did when it was time to run in between some cones and stuff like that. They had the stopwatches out. Ideally, you're a great athlete, can do well at both. I don't know why he tested so poorly once they were ready to actually measure his speed and athleticism, but on the field he's way more athletic than that, man. And then also shouts out to Quincy Riley, a cornerback out of Louisville that the Commanders showed serious interest in leading up to the draft. Brought him in for a top 30 visit, met with him at the combine, all that type of stuff. But he was asked about going against wide receiver Ja'Cory Brooks in practice every day. He said, quote, "Every time a scout is asked which wide receiver gave me a challenge, I asked, can I say practice? And if they say yes, I always go with him, Ja'Cory Brooks," unquote. He even also said, quote, just his route running and love for the game. In practice, you think he's in a game. If he makes a catch, he's screaming. He lets his presence be known in practice every single day. Going against him every week prepared me for the game. Nobody was better, unquote. So not only is he technically in-game wise a freak athlete, pro day testing wise alpha athlete, but we're just gonna go with the fact that he's a better athlete than way better athlete than when he tested. And you can even see it with the fact of how much he gets open on the field. But not only that, but then he's also a super Dan Quinn guy, super motivated, super setting the example of how we should practice, how we should take practice seriously, how we should always play with passion, even if it's only practice and not even a game. So it goes to show, like, this is why the Commanders are like, all right, well, he went undrafted. He may not have been enough of a priority for us to draft him, but since he was just sitting out there as an undraftable free agent, you know what I'm saying? We might as well go ahead and bring him in, since he has the work ethic that we like as well, along with the production. I mean, literally, the tape looks good. The production is good. The work ethic, the mentality is good. It's literally only the terrible testing that I believe left them undrafted. But then you have Dupree Brugler, who had him ranked as his 36th wide receiver in the class, as 283rd player overall. He set a tall, lean target. Brooks eats up ground quickly to swipe press, stack corners, and use vertical pacing to track the ball and create late separation. And hey, that's an important quality to have. Even if you're not open the entire route, if you know how to perfectly time and set up how to get separation at the very end to where you're technically open by the time the ball gets to you, that is a very underrated trait. Continuing with Dupree Brugler, he said he does a nice job battling for jump ball positioning, but also fights the ball at times. He needs to improve his finishing focus to earn the trust of his coaches at the next level. Overall, Brooks' lack of short area agility and pacing allows man coverage to stay attached to him on a short and intermediate routes, but his play strength, tracking skills, and catch radius could make him a potential wide receiver 4 or 5 at the NFL level. And then shouts out the Draft Buzz, because I agree with some of what they said, but not a lot of it. I feel like they're definitely much lower on him than I am. They said when evaluating Brooks, the film shows both promise and limitations that explain his mid to late round consideration. His 4.65 deep speed raises legitimate concerns for his vertical game, even though you see him on tape all of the time getting down the field on people. Yet his intermediate to deep receiving grades tell a different story. Brooks compensates through excellent body positioning and ball tracking skills, finding ways to win despite athletic limitations. And when watching his Louisville film, you see flashes of downfield playmaking mixed with technical inconsistencies that will limit his immediate impact at the NFL level. Where Brooks lacks in pure separation speed, he balances with functional versatility. His special teams background at Alabama, particularly as a punt blocker, provides immediate roster value while his receiving skills develop. That's another thing as well. Not only just a returner, but also blocking punts. The shoulder injury history merits thorough medical evaluation, but his bounce back production at Louisville suggests durability. I would agree. His development timeline remains a question. As a 4-year college player still working through fundamentals that should be more refined at this stage. I can kind of see that. And then the NFL transition will challenge Brooks in many ways that college defenses couldn't expose. His contested catchability and scoring instinct will translate in specific situations, but his separation limitations will be magnified against NFL corners. Now, I do agree that corners at the NFL level are better than corners in the college level, but I don't feel like he was as terrible at separating as a lot of people act like he is. He's neither a pure possession receiver nor a true deep threat, instead occupying a challenging middle ground that requires schematic assistance. Now I can kind of see that a little bit, but I think he deserves a little bit more credit as a deep threat. With proper coaching focused on route precision and release techniques, Brooks could outperform his draft positioning as a complementary piece. His ceiling appears capped by athletic limitations. Again, on the field, he's very athletic, but his floor is raised by special teams value and situational receiving utility that can earn him a steady NFL role. And so I'm gonna let you know right now, we don't have a guy like Ja'Cory Brooks on this roster, which is why I feel like there is at least just a very small glimmer of hope that he may even make this roster. Because even Terry body catches, even when he's going up for contested catches, this is the only guy that like consistently goes up and uses his height to his advantage and high points the ball at the highest point possible in the air and plucks it out of the air with his hands, not his body. Ja'Cory had a 69.6% contested catch rate last year. So if you just throw it up there to him, basically, he has more than a 2/3 chance to come down with the ball. That is actually really insane. That is ridiculous. And with Jaden Daniels, with how insane his accuracy is, Jacory doesn't even necessarily have to get super wide open with this route running and speed on a consistent basis, because Jaden Daniels is so accurate, he's so great with his timing and things like that, he's so great at getting chemistry with his receivers, that even if you're not very open, Jaden Daniels is going to basically throw you open. And then again, like DP Brugler pointed out, this guy has a knack for finding a way to get open at the very last second. He may not be open in the majority of the route, but as long as his quarterback trusts him and is willing to throw it up there to him, he does a great job of getting open at the last second. And even if he doesn't, a 70% contested catch rate is insane. That has to be one of the highest of this draft, if not the highest of this draft. And then also, shouts out to Trav on Twitter for pointing this out. The best wide receivers in the 2025 class versus man coverage. Now, of course, Trey Harris was by far the best with a 10.47 yards per reception, but Kyle Williams was second with a 4.39. Jalen Royals was third with a 3.8. Tech McMillan was fourth with a 3.5. And how about Jacory Brooks was fifth with a 3.2. Jaden Higgins was sixth. Pat Bryant was seventh. Then you had Luther Burden. Then you had Xavier Restrepo. And then you had Tez Johnson. But again, Jacory Brooks was fifth. So that's now like the third or fourth stat that I've given you that Jacory Brooks is like top 5 out of this receiver class. The fact that he went undrafted is insane, because you don't necessarily have to be extremely well-rounded and be able to do everything really well. If you're going to a smart offense with a really good offensive coordinator, a creative offensive coordinator, an offensive coordinator that's not lazy, you have a good quarterback, you have a nice receiving core, and overall just a really good, well-built offense around this specific player. If you just come in and you're just really good to elite at just a couple or a handful of things, we're only going to ask you to do that, and you're going to look like you're balling out. Well, really, the scheme is taking away your weaknesses, hiding your weaknesses, and bringing out your strengths for you to really showcase them and utilize them to the best of your abilities. We're the type of offense that can definitely do that. So we don't need him to be great at everything. Just continue to have that ridiculous contested catch rate, the ability to get open at the very last second to make Jaden Daniels' job easier. And then you're also coming with some punt return ability and some punt blocking ability as well. And he has a more advanced route tree than I feel like some people are giving him credit for. And he's a way better athlete on the field than he tested. We can work with that, man. And Louis T also brought up a great point. This could very well be our very own version of Juwan Jennings. And that would be crazy if this guy ends up following the exact same career arc of a Juwan Jennings, because then that is a huge steal. I mean, getting a Juwan Jennings in the third round is a steal, let alone as an undrafted free agent. Now, taking a look at the roster, I mean, you have Terry obviously making the roster, Deebo Samuel obviously, Noah Brown obviously, and then after that, it's kind of up for grabs, to be honest with you. But even though I think Luke McCaffrey's pretty safe because he's going into his second year as a third-round pick. Of course, Jalen Lane as a fourth-round pick. I mean, it's not necessarily guaranteed, but I'm very sure he's safe. I honestly feel like there's like a tier of Terry and Deebo as tier 1, or I guess if you wanted to really separate it, get really down to it, Terry McLaurin, top 10 receiver. Tier 2 has De'Ami Brown, and then I would say the tier 3 is probably Noah Brown and Jalen Lane. Then the tier after that is Luke McCaffrey, and then you have just this group of KJ Osborne, Michael Gallup. I mean, I'm not very confident in either of those guys making the team. You have Kazmi Allen, Michael Strahan, and Chris Moore, who are more so practice squad guys. So, hey, man, this boy Jacory Brooks has a lane to where maybe best case scenario for him. I'm not saying it's very likely. I even doubt it quite a bit, but there is an avenue to where he could end up being the 6th receiver on this roster, let alone if they keep 7, he could be the 7th. Who knows? With a really good offseason, you never know. And again, this guy has experience returning punts and kickoffs along with blocking them, so that could also give him a roster advantage when cuts come down to it, because right now it's Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey, and I guess you could throw Kazmi Allen in there as well, and Jacory Brooks. Those are your returning options right now as far as punt returner goes. Again, Olamide Zaccheaus and Jamison Crowder, your main punt returners last year, all left. So who's going to replace them? I think Jalen Lane is like in the lead by far for me as far as projection, but after that, it's up for grabs between Luke McCaffrey, Kazmi Allen, and Jacory Brooks. So we'll see. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know if you feel about everything discussed in the video. Please still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinion video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Really appreciate y'all for supporting every video. I really appreciate y'all. If you made it this far in this video, especially 25 minutes long of a breakdown, at least 25 minutes worth of recording, and we're breaking down an undrafted free agent that we didn't even sign the same day as the last round of the draft. We're talking about a couple of days later, we signed this guy out of nowhere. You made it this far in the video. That is a big salute to you, man. I really appreciate you for you rocking with my content this much. Of course, make sure you leave a like on the way out. And also, man, let me know in the comment section how you feel about Ja'Cory Brooks. You know what I'm saying? How do you feel about him potentially making his roster? How do you feel about his his terrible athletic testing versus how he actually looks on the field athleticism wise? How do you feel about his traits? Do you feel like Cliff Kingsbury could do a great job of taking what he's great at and making him better at it and only force him to do that? Do you feel like he could be a good fit for the offense? Do you feel like he's going to compete for the returning job? Do you feel like he has a chance of being the 6th or 7th receiver that makes this roster, maybe even over a KJ Osborne or a Michael Gallup? Does Michael Gallup even love football right now? Is he really serious about actually for real competing after he retired on the Raiders out of nowhere last year? And then KJ Osborne, I mean, we gave that man weeks and all he did was get a holding penalty for us last year. So I like KJ Osborne and Michael Gallup's talents, but I'm not just going to automatically assume they're going to make this roster over Ja'Cory. So let me know how y'all feel about all of that. Really appreciate y'all. I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm out.